The more you let go, the more comes back to you. At first, this sounds like some mystical riddle, the kind of thing you might find scribbled on a slip of paper inside a fortune cookie. Yet, if you look carefully, you'll see that it is not just a trick of words. It is, in fact, one of the oldest truths of nature. Life moves most freely not when we force it, but when we stop forcing at all. The river doesn't muscle its way to the sea, it simply flows. Leaves don't cling to branches for fear of falling, they let go, drifting into the wind without complaint. The waves return to the shore not because they push harder, but because that is the rhythm of their being. And here is the paradox. We live in a culture that despises doing nothing. From the moment we are children, we are told that to be worthy is to be busy. To sit still is laziness. To pause is to fall behind. And so we scramble, we hustle, we strain. We fill our calendars with meetings, our minds with plans, our hearts with endless what-ifs. We think this is power. We think this is how life rewards us. Yet look closely. The more we grip, the more life slips through our fingers. So, let me ask you, what happens when we stop gripping so tightly? What if the very thing we are chasing is waiting for us in the silence between our steps? What if the secret power isn't in endless striving, but in the courage to do absolutely nothing, to let the current carry us? Of course, nothing terrifies us more than this. The mind whispers, if you stop, everything will fall apart. If you don't control, no one will. And yet, notice what actually happens in your own life. How many times has the best solution arrived in the shower, or while walking aimlessly, or when you finally stopped thinking about it? How many times did the moment you surrendered turn out to be the very moment life opened a door? Doing nothing is not the absence of life. It is the invitation for life to arrive. It is not passivity. It is trust. It is the river teaching us that flow is wiser than force. The leaf showing us that letting go is not death, but transformation. The more you let go, the more comes back to you. This is not poetry. This is reality. And it waits patiently for you the moment you dare to loosen your grip. There's a story about a farmer who once gave his helper a simple task. He told him, "Take these potatoes and sort them into 3 piles, large, medium, and small." It didn't sound like hard labor. No plowing, no lifting heavy sacks, no long hours under the sun. Just sorting potatoes. Yet by the end of the day, the helper quit. Not because his body was tired, but because his mind was. The endless stream of tiny decisions wore him down more than any field work could. This is the strange exhaustion of over-effort. Sometimes it isn't the weight of the work that breaks us, but the constant need to decide, control, and manage every little thing. Our culture tells us this is necessary, that success depends on holding the reins tightly at all times. But often, the more we try to manage, the more we drain ourselves. Think about your own life. How many times have you spent more energy worrying about a problem than actually solving it? Maybe you've lain awake at night, rehearsing conversations in your head, trying to predict every outcome. Maybe you've rewritten the same email 5 times, not because the words were wrong, but because you couldn't let them simply be. Or perhaps you've noticed how you come home from a day that wasn't physically demanding, yet you feel more exhausted than if you'd spent it moving bricks. Why? Because the mind has been carrying 1,000 invisible potatoes, endlessly sorting, endlessly gripping. And here is the irony. Often the breakthroughs arrive not when we keep pushing, but when we finally stop. The painter stares at the canvas until her eyes blur, and then, while sipping tea, the image comes to her. The musician struggles with a melody for hours, and then, humming absent-mindedly in the shower, the missing notes fall into place. The student stares at his notes in panic, but after a walk in the park, the answer rises effortlessly in his mind. It is as if life refuses to be bullied into revealing its gifts. Like the river, it moves when allowed to move. Like the leaf, it lets go when the time has come. The helper sorting potatoes tried to master the endless details, but in the end, he was mastered by them. The lesson is quiet but powerful. Trying to control everything is the fastest way to exhaust yourself. Letting go, doing nothing for a moment, often clears the space where wisdom can finally land. The story of the helper sorting potatoes may sound almost silly at first. How could something so small be so exhausting? And yet, that is the hidden mirror of our lives. Most of us aren't broken by grand disasters or crushing responsibilities. We are worn down by the drip, drip, drip of endless control, the constant need to sort, decide, fix, and manage. Overthinking becomes its own kind of labor, invisible but heavy. When you try to control life at every turn, you discover an odd truth. Control itself becomes the burden. The more tightly you grip, the more energy drains from you. The more you rehearse outcomes, the less alive you feel in the moment you're actually living. Eventually, you realize that the exhaustion you carry is not from life itself, but from the illusion that you must keep life on a leash. Nature has always known better. Rivers don't force their way to the sea, and yet they arrive. They meet boulders, cliffs, and dry seasons, but they never fight. They bend, they curve, they pause in still pools, and yet in time, they find the ocean. A tree does not strain to grow leaves in spring or to drop them in autumn. It trusts the rhythm already written into its being. Alan Watts once said that nature itself pries your fingers open and shows you the illusion of control. If you've ever faced loss, you know this truth. A loved one leaves, a job disappears, a plan collapses. No matter how tightly you try to clutch, life reminds you that your grip was never what kept things in place. And strangely, after the initial pain, something else arrives. Space, renewal, a new path that could not exist while your hand was still clenched shut. Doing nothing, in this sense, is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the act of stepping aside so that life can reveal its own intelligence, just as the body heals. When you rest, so too does the heart, the mind, and even the world around you. By loosening your grip, you allow currents larger than you to do what they have always done, carry you exactly where you need to go. The quiet power of doing absolutely nothing is this. It restores us to alignment with the flow of things. It reminds us that we are not machines built to control every outcome, but part of a living rhythm that knows how to unfold if only we stop interfering. There are really only two ways to move through life. The first is the path of control. The second is the path of trust. On the path of control, every day feels like a battle. You measure your worth by how many things you can keep in line, how many fires you can put out, how many plates you can spin without letting one crash to the floor. At first, this might even feel like strength. People admire your discipline, your efficiency, your relentless drive, but over time, the cracks begin to show. Anxiety becomes your constant companion. Burnout lurks at the edge of every accomplishment. Relationships suffer because control is not something you keep only for yourself. It seeps into how you treat others too. You begin to micromanage, to demand, to tighten your grip on the people you love. Slowly, control isolates. It builds walls where there should be bridges. The path of trust looks very different. It doesn't mean apathy or carelessness. It means cooperation with life instead of constant opposition. Think of a forest. No tree demands that the others grow shorter so it can reach the sun. No bird insists that the river flow differently to suit its nest. Everything exists in a quiet rhythm of shared power. And because of this, the forest thrives. Each part supports the others without dominating. Trust is like this. It recognizes that you are not separate from the larger system, but part of it. When you choose trust, something unexpected happens. Help arrives from places you didn't plan for. Opportunities open in directions you never imagined. People surprise you with generosity. And life, instead of feeling like a series of obstacles to conquer, begins to feel like a rhythm you can join. You no longer carry the unbearable pressure of being the sole director of reality. Instead, you become a participant in a vast, unfolding dance. Alan Watts often compared this shift to the difference between monarchy and democracy. Control is monarchy, one ruler, absolute, unyielding, terrified of rebellion. Trust is democracy, distributed, flexible, resilient, shared among many hands. One collapses under the weight of its own rigidity. The other flourishes because no single part must hold everything. Here is the memorable truth. Shared power nourishes all things without dominating anything. When you release the need to dominate your life, you discover a strength deeper than control. You find cooperation, flow, and a strange, effortless harmony that no amount of force could ever create. We often believe that wisdom means having the answers. We imagine the wise person as someone who can see farther ahead, predict outcomes, and guide others with certainty. But what if real wisdom is the opposite? What if the deepest freedom comes not from saying, "I know," but from admitting, "I don't know"? The mind resists this idea. Not knowing feels like weakness, like standing unarmed in a world that demands protection. Yet, if you look closely, you'll see that "I don't know" is not a deficiency. It is a doorway. The moment you admit it, you step into a space of openness, curiosity, and possibility that certainty could never offer. Think of it this way. A blade cannot cut itself. Light cannot shine on itself. The eye cannot see itself. There are limits built into the structure of reality, and those limits are not flaws. They are invitations. They remind us that we are part of a web larger than our individual grasp. To say, "I don't know," is to honor this truth, to accept that life's intelligence is greater than the sum of our plans. And strangely, once you allow "I don't know" into your life, it becomes a source of relief. You no longer have to carry the unbearable pressure of being the one who must know everything, solve everything, control everything. You can finally breathe. you can finally be surprised. And surprise is the essence of aliveness. Consider relationships. How often do we demand that others fit into the mold of what we think we know they should be? But the most beautiful moments with another person come not when we predict them, but when they surprise us, when they reveal a side we didn't expect, when they give us more than we thought to ask. In truth, what I really want is tied to what you want. And what you want? I don't know. And that's the gift. Surprise me. Doing nothing in this sense is not about passivity, but about resting in the mystery. When you let go of the compulsion to know, you allow life to reveal itself as it is, unpredictable, uncontrollable, yet astonishingly generous. I don't know is not the end of wisdom. It is its beginning. We began with a paradox. The more you let go, the more comes back to you. At first, it felt almost impossible, like a trick of words or a promise too good to be true. But now, having walked through the stories of rivers, leaves, and even potatoes, perhaps you can sense why it is not only true, but inevitable. Control drains us. Over-effort isolates us. Anxiety grows in the cracks of constant grasping. But when we dare to loosen our grip, something unexpected happens. Life begins to move again. The river, left unblocked, finds its way to the sea. The tree, unafraid of loss, prepares itself for spring by letting go in autumn. Even our own minds, when we stop forcing, surprise us with fresh clarity. Decay, change, impermanence. These are not enemies to fight. They are the very allies that make renewal possible. Without endings, there would be no beginnings. Without pauses, no music. Without silence, no sound. To do nothing is not to fall behind, but to join the rhythm that was carrying you all along. So ask yourself, what might happen if you trusted the tide instead of fighting it? What might arrive if you stopped sorting every potato, stopped planning every outcome, and allowed life to surprise you? Perhaps the freedom you've been chasing is already here, waiting not in your effort, but in your willingness to let go. Alan Watts often reminded us that we are not strangers in this universe. We are not separate, stranded beings trying to bend life to our will. We are expressions of the same flow that carries rivers to the sea and leaves into the wind. To trust that flow is not to give up power. It is to discover a deeper, quieter power that was never yours to manufacture, only yours to join. So here is the invitation. Let the river carry you. Trust the tide. Open your hands. What is yours will arrive in its own season, and you will be ready, not because you forced it, but because you learned the quiet power of doing absolutely nothing.